An I-Team investigation uncovers hundreds of sex offenders in Wisconsin classrooms there with students on a daily basis.
But as investigative reporter Aaron Diamond shows us, the scary part is you're not allowed to know who these offenders are.
Yeah, Mike, when convicted sex offenders move into a community, there's nothing secret about it. Their name, address, and pictures show up on a public registry. In some cases, police even hold meetings to give neighbors a heads up. But the rules change when the offenders are children. These are the faces of sex offenders. We know who they are, what they did, and where they live. But there are other sex criminals among us whose faces you'll never see, with names you'll never know, because they're children.
It's a huge problem. We need to be informed. We want to know what our children are in the classrooms with.
Coming up, you'll hear how many are in local classrooms. See what school districts know about them.
We deal with that every day, and it's something we think about every day.
And what they might not.
Kids shouldn't be in charge of protecting themselves.
You'll also hear about a secret state registry and why most kids who commit sex crimes never wind up on it. A sex offender in your neighborhood is creepy enough. One in your kid's classroom is just plain scary. Is that something you would want to know about?
I would want to know about that. I have a right to know about that.
Not really. When a kid commits a crime, even a violent sex crime, Wisconsin law keeps the case confidential.
Juveniles are not mini adults, and the legislature has recognized that.
After serving their sentences, these kids get to go back to school, but their classmates have no idea. And parents will never be told their kid's friend could be a child molester. Does it sort of frustrate you that you don't get to know?
It frustrates me not to be informed. I'd like to know what my children are up against and who's in my child's class.
The courts give school districts a heads up when a student is found delinquent of a sex crime. That's it. No other details about what the kid did. And the law doesn't let districts tell parents anything.
The big challenge is the balance between respecting and maintaining that child's confidentiality, as well as keeping every child in our district safe.
How do you do that? Well, in Wauwatosa, for example, the district tells the principal. Well, what about everyone else who has contact with the kid? Well, that depends. Does the teacher know?
In some cases, the teacher may know. In some cases, if there's a student, it may not be necessary.
At the very least, we wanted to know how many juvenile sex offenders there are in Wisconsin classrooms right now. We figured a good place to start would be the Department of Corrections, which keeps a juvenile sex offender registry. Names, addresses, crimes, even where the kids go to school. Thing is, only victims' families and law enforcement have access to it. School districts don't. After weeks of negotiating with the DOC, the IT managed to get a breakdown of juvenile registrants 18 or younger who reported attending a K-12 school, nearly 200 statewide. In our area, we found 2 in Washington County, 3 in Ozaukee County. There are 4 registered in Sheboygan County, 6 in both Racine and Kenosha counties. Waukesha County has 15, while Milwaukee County leads the way with 47 registered offenders attending school. But the key word here is registered. Prosecutors say the actual number of sex offenders in Wisconsin classrooms is much higher.
Very, very few juveniles have been required to register.
That's right. Even though the law requires kids found guilty of a sex crime to register with the state, judges decide who signs up and who doesn't.
Is that a problem?
I can't comment on whether that's a problem or not.
I mean, as a prosecutor, that must frustrate you, though.
Well, we do what we can. We're bound by the law.
Laws that make tracking the actual number of these kids tough.
There are certainly more than 47 kids in Milwaukee Public Schools that have a history of sexual misconduct.
Turns out, Milwaukee County Children's Court finds 125 kids delinquent of sex crimes every year. Psychologist Stephen Gilbertson works with these kids. He says nearly 90% never commit another crime. But what about the other 10%?
I certainly wouldn't encourage them to go be alone with that person. I mean, that wouldn't be real smart.
But remember, you don't get to know who these kids are. So keeping kids safe is really left up to the schools. Not good enough for some parents.
The school district really just needs to be able to supply us information, and it's up to the parents whether they want to relay that information to their children.
A balancing act for parents, students, and schools, required to teach every child no matter what they've done. Now look, we're not suggesting school districts start plastering pictures of these kids in the halls or
these kids shouldn't go to school, but every parent we spoke to over the last few months seemed at the very least uneasy about the laws which protect the offenders instead of their classmates, Mike.
So the innocent students, the parents, and in many cases the teachers don't have any idea that a student sitting maybe up there in the back row has a history.
No, they have no clue.
Wow. Well, Aaron, you've also got an update, I understand, on your investigation last night about MPS and their travel policies.
Yeah, that's right. Now, you heard last night how folks over at MPS love to travel to out-of-state conferences and conventions. Nearly 10,000 trips in the last 4 years, millions of dollars in expenses. Our investigation led to some new travel policies for the district. Today, we spoke to the superintendent about those changes.
I mean, there was some sort of uncertainty as to what was being brought back.
And you know, and I think you raise a good point. I think what we're trying to do in our district is create greater consistency and predictability.
Well, to do that, the policy makes drastic cuts to who's allowed to travel and how often, Mike.
All right, thanks for the update, Aaron.